managing application security. So this topic basically looks at Microsoft's Cloud App Security and how that is all integrated with some of the other aspects that we've worked on today, with risky users, risky sign-ins, as well as your applications, as well as DLP, which Brody spoke about in the previous topic. What is Cloud App Security? So Cloud App Security is actually a CASB, or a Cloud Access Security Broker, which allows logs, reverse proxy, and API integration to be able to pull in information from your applications and your endpoints into one key area. In the area of Office 365, it already does that with things like your risky users, your risky sign-ins. It already does that with the applications that you have as enterprise apps. So it already has all this context that exists within the platform, and then you're able to integrate it with some third-party apps through API integration or logging that gets filtered into the Cloud App Security system. But in essence, it kind of gives you a platform where you can make your decisions around your applications and be able to go through a process of understanding your applications, understanding the risk of those applications, and then govern them in a way that makes sense for your organization. So the first step, step one, which is right here, is to actually go in and get an understanding and discover your applications. So just for some context, on average, a 50-seat, so a 50 user-based organization typically has about 1,000 applications that they utilize within their work environment. And that's just a very generic number and a very generic context, because it is dependent on the enterprise itself. It's dependent on the applications and the products that they utilize. It depends on the policies that they put in place, whether they want people to access certain applications or not. But essentially, the kind of context is you might be very narrow-minded in the way that you think about your products and your applications that you utilize, when in essence it's actually a larger scope. And then from that, you can assess the risks and also tie it together with compliance in understanding those applications. So what the Cloud App Security Portal does is it will actually give you a rated score per the application, as per Microsoft's metrics. So it can go in and it will give you a bit of a breakdown of what they rate highly, what they don't rate highly, if MFA is an option, if all of these other protocols are met, if ISO compliance is made, just due to the nature of the application, not so much how they use it, but the application itself. Then you can kind of put together a bit of an understanding, what are the key applications you utilize within your enterprise, whether they meet the certain standards of risk, and then you're able to then govern them. So you can put in aspects like DLP, data loss prevention. You can put in conditional access measures. You can kind of control them in a means that you can use them within your environment in a way that makes sense for your enterprise business. So, and then once that's all done, then it's a matter of like continuously monitoring and detecting the methods that you've put in place and understanding what's going on. And that way it's far easier to detect when data has actually left your environment and what you need to do in that regard once that comes through. So the Cloud App Security landscape is quite a in-depth portal. It takes into consideration a lot of the aspects that we're talking about today. It also has the managerial capabilities of being able to look after all these cloud applications you may not have been able to look after in the past, with API integration, reverse proxy, and log collection. So you can link specific logs directly out of an application and pass that through Cloud App Security, just to give you a better understanding of what's going on in your environment, how that all kind of ties in together with the way that you manage and control your apps. So the Cloud App Security Portal itself, which I'll show in a demo shortly, will kind of tie in some of the things we've talked about today. So if a user has a conditional access policy put against them that doesn't allow them to go and operate with an application, or for instance, conditional access policy means that you can't actually use an application unless it's sanctioned, for instance, then you can't kind of go through like that's how an administrator would be able to control the apps. So you'd get a global understanding of what your app scope looks like, and then from there you can put in measures against it. So I'll just pause it there at the dashboard. So this is the Cloud App Security dashboard here. So you can see some certain things like all the activities are monitored. So these activities are being brought in through the various things that you've already implemented. So if you've implemented risky using risky sign-ins, all the activities from those are being brought in. Anything to do with conditional access, all the activities are brought in. Anything that is in that regard. Next, we've got the files. So the files are monitored in various means, but typically it would be files that are labeled or classified through DLP, and you've also got the accounts. So you've got the users, and that's kind of monitored through the risky users, risky sign-ins, as well as what sits in your Azure Active Directory. So basically, all the information that you currently have across the board from your tenant feeds into this, and then you can kind of get a clearer understanding to discover every single aspect of your environment, discover information about your users, what applications they're using, what applications you need to sanction or unsanction if you don't want them to be in your environment. This kind of platform allows you to have a look at everything from a large scope. So just here you can see all the different alerts. And this kind of stems from, this is kind of the first area of threat protection as a whole from Microsoft. So talking back to the Zero Trust methodology, this part of it is solely about the apps. However, it does tie in with all the different pillars, the users, the identity, the devices. I mean, in terms of applications or browser-based SaaS applications, then it might depend on the device that you log in with. It might mean if that device is not enrolled within the environment, or it hasn't met the criteria of the policy that is put in place, whether it's up to date with the operating system or up to date with Windows updates or whatever it might be, then this portal allows you to go in there and get the alerts and understand it. So this dashboard here allows you to kind of get all the information in one area. And if you can just continue to go through the dashboard. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and have a look at one of the open alerts. So once that's in, I'll just pause that. So this is looking at an activity that is related to the app, which is Cloud App Security in itself. So it's actually taking the information from Azure Active Directory. This is a logon activity that has happened, so it's actually pulling it from the risky users portal, but it's actually taking it in and putting it as an alert within your Cloud App Security dashboard. So you can see that this is an activity from an infrequented country, so you can come in here and get a better understanding of maybe a consistency between the types of infrequent countries that are presented here, or it could be the type of users. So if there's a consistency on the user side, then rather than going into the risky sign-in portal, you can actually see this through the Cloud App Security portal. So this user is an administrator, and it's his first login within 32 days of this organisation. So that's some context about the event, and then that will lead into what needs to be done within this. So if we keep going through the demo, so just pointing out that it's a user, he's an administrator, the app is the Cloud App Security and the IP address, where they're from, the device, so it gives you some information about the device, and then you can go in and drill down in terms of viewing the user activity. You can view the device activity. It's kind of centralizing all the different functions. So you can see the apps that this user itself is using, and how that kind of ties in together. And then from this portal, you're able to go in and also confirm the action you want to take from it. So you're able to confirm the user's identity, you can block the user's identity in a very similar means that you do. Just pause it there, maybe go back 10 seconds. Nope, okay, pause it there. So what we did there was we resolved an issue. So basically once we put into context what has happened and we do the control action, then within this we want to be able to resolve it. So we can actually go in there and resolve it, we can mark it with a comment, and that way that alert will no longer sit within the dashboard. It will also no longer sit within the risky users, risky sign-ins, if that's what it's tied to. So we can continue on now. And so in going back to the dashboard, we're now actually going to go in and have a look at it from an application perspective. So if we go to the alerts, which is another area, we're actually going to go in and see an app breach. So if we pause it there, we can see that there was an app breach. So this is a breach that is a public based knowledge information that's out there in the public, where Microsoft has pulled that information into the cloud app security to kind of give administrators a level of understanding of what's going on from the application itself. So according to public information, we're using Twitter as an example here. There was a breach back at the end of last year where you can actually go in and get a better understanding of what that breach entailed, whether that meant that there was a problem with the application itself, the version of it, users' information being leaked, whatever it might be, then this will give you a bit of an outlier in terms of what's going on. Below that, it'll actually show the discovered app. So it'll show you that Twitter is the app that we're looking at in question. It'll give you a bit of a high-level overview of the traffic, whether it's upload, download, how many transactions occurred, how many users and how many IPs. So you might have more users, but they're in the same IP range if it's an office or whatever it might be, and when the application was last seen. So if we keep going on a little bit more, we can do things like we can unsanction the app. I just want to actually show a bit further that, and just pause it there. So the key thing here is the score. So if you have a look, and I'll just point up that way, this 7 that's there, that's the score that Microsoft is giving to this application. So when the application itself comes along with a score of 7, it's Microsoft going through a lot of different sets of criteria to give that score. So if you have a look here, it'll go through and it'll give a tick or a cross against things that are actually a part of this application. So it gives you a bit of a broader understanding of whether this application is secure from Microsoft's perspective. So this comes in really handy when you want to, well, when you're working with maybe a government-based organization where you need to be ISO approved. So you need all your applications to be ISO approved. You can come into the Cloud App Security portal and find out if the application in itself has been approved for any of the different classifications you may require. It'll give you information about the different things like an admin audit trail, so whether this app has any admin audit trail or not, IP address restriction or MFA or any of these different integrations that the application itself has will give you a bit of an understanding and a better understanding of whether the app is secure to be utilized within your environment. So an administrator can come in and make a decision around the application. So Twitter in itself is not really a small product, and therefore 99% of the time it's not going to be utilized in an uncompromised fashion. But in saying that, this will give you a better understanding of every application you've got. So you're able to come in and understand every information that's being fed through to the Cloud App Security portal. So in referring back to that, on average, the 50 users with 1,000 apps, you can come in and get a score for every single one of those 1,000 apps, and you can rate them based on the scores, you can rate them based on the users, you can rate them based on ISO compliance, you can rate them on anything that needs to be across the board for those applications. So it's a really important tool, because once you understand the apps, then you can put in and govern them in the way that you need to. You can restrict the users from having the permissions that they should have within the apps. You can do all that stuff. So in this case with Twitter, and I'll get you to keep continuing on with the demo, we're just going to mark this application as a sanctioned app. And so we understand what this application is, we understand what it's being utilized for, and we're going to mark it as sanctioned. And once you mark and I'll just pause it there, once you mark it as sanctioned, then that application in itself kind of allows it to correlate between where that application might be utilized as well. So if you mark any of your apps as sanctioned, then you're kind of classifying it as an appropriate application for your business, is probably the best way to put it. So once that's done, we want to also resolve the alert. So we'll just go up there and resolve the alert. We might give some context. App was sanctioned. Maybe you might specifically need to put in a reason in there about why it was sanctioned, if it's a compliancy-based thing. And what I might do is I'll just, like, you can actually view dashboards. I'll step this way. You can view dashboards about the specific apps as well. So rather than doing it at the alert level, you can do it at the app level. You can do it from the user level. So once you actually go into the application, you can then click on the user, and the user then will be able to give you the different types of things. So once you've got all that information together, you can get a better understanding of your threat detection and your risk, and be able to understand that a bit better. We've got a question coming in. So the question that's come in is, how do we get data in there? My dashboard currently shows 0 apps. Now, Cloud App Security requires a license measure. So I'm not entirely sure what license this user has currently got in their tenant, but it does need at least an E3 license, I believe, in order to actually get this information and be able to utilize this feature. If it's not a license-based thing, then the dashboard itself should be able to tell you what you need to do to have any of the API integrations. But in regards, if you have the license in place, you should be able to go in here and see the information that is all tied together. So things like the Azure Identity Level 2 compared to Azure Identity Level 1. There's caveats around being able to utilize Cloud App Security because it's tied to one of the higher levels of the Microsoft scope. So it would be, I'd hazard a guess that you're likely using an M365 license, in which case this is not actually tied to your license in itself, but you would be able to purchase the security-based add-ons that would allow you to kind of utilize it in the means that you need to. We'll just go on to the next part, please. So just some recent updates. So some things like real-time session control, which is something that everyone is looking forward to, because then you can actually see in real time what's going on and you're able to make decisions in real time. That way you can kind of